Welcome, everybody, to the award-winning RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by RotoWire's free trial, rotowire.com/try for the free look behind our paywall. It is Friday, January 17th, 2025. Alex Barutha here with Shannon McEwen and Ken K-Train Kreitz.
All aboard.
As a reminder, if you are watching on YouTube, get your questions in the chat. It's a bit of a slow news day, so we'd appreciate a little extra Q&A. Let's kick things off, though.
Thank you, P-Dub.
Thank you, P-Dub. Yes. We'll get to your question as you were first. The proverbial first on YouTube. Last night, the Thunder beat the Cavaliers because I thought the Cavaliers were going to win. 134-114 in the rematch of the league's two best teams. SGA, of course, delivers 40 points, 8 assists, 3 rebounds over 29 minutes on 17 of 26 shooting. Did you know Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has a better 2-point percentage than Shaquille O'Neal in his best season?
Holy smokes, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Nice nugget. Where'd you pull that one from, Alex?
I saw it when I woke up on Twitter this morning and was scrolling through my phone. I don't know if it was Shaq's best season or one of Shaq's season, but he's basically prime Shaq from 2-point range. We also had Lou Dort, 8 of 11 from 3, I think that is, or just from the field, Ken?
Just from the field. Sorry.
22 points.
But you know, it's 6 of 9 from 3. That ain't bad either.
Another nugget is that he passed Larry Bird all time and made threes in this game.
They shoot a little more nowadays.
OKC hit 50% of their shots. Donovan Mitchell again I think he made 3 of his field goals in the first game, and now 3 of his field goals. He's basically 6 for 30 during these two OKC Cleveland games. Ken, what do you make of this matchup?
Well, I know this is why you took Cleveland. Cleveland's got such good size, and somehow the Thunder beat him with the other Jaylin Williams starting at center. As Shannon points out later, Hartenstein's out for we don't know how long. Holmgren, of course, is still out for a while. So they basically go small. Now, you know, the better Jaylin Williams can also line up at center. He actually switches well on 5s. I'm just so impressed with how switchable their defense is. What was the Cavs coach kept saying? They impose their will. I just love this Thunder team. If they played in the West Coast, we'd be hearing about them every 2 minutes. Just love this Thunder squad and love them long term. I mean, good. What a great organization.
It was still a very surprising game, though, because if there's one team that you could argue is playing better than OKC this year, it's Cleveland. I mean, Cleveland has been absolutely unstoppable. It was surprising to see. Thankfully, the late game on TNT last night was at least competitive.
Question for you guys. Do the Thunder make a trade, right? Last year, they brought in Gordon Hayward. That was a disaster. They've got more draft picks, though, than they know what to do with. So do they make another deal, or do they say, this chemistry is perfect, let's not muck this up?
I will say it's funny. It's funny about that Gordon deal. I was listening to Bobby Marks on the Ryan Russillo podcast, and they actually talked about that trade, and they were like, that trade was actually just as much about getting off the Micic contract. And I was like, getting off the Micic contract?
How big
Makes
was
sense
that?
because he's not good.
Right.
I don't know, Shannon. What do you think? I mean, I don't think they would do anything to like really shake up the roster, but there's always guys like Keon Johnson or some like kind of role players around, right?
Yeah, I do believe they're going to bring in some pieces. I mean, at some point, they just have such a large collection of premium draft picks that you're not going to be able to utilize all those draft picks, add those top prospects to the roster. You're going to have to make a trade at some point. So, but I agree with Al. Like, I don't think they're definitely not going to bring in a guy like Jimmy Butler who could destroy team chemistry. It's got to be a chemistry fit as well. And a Cam Johnson type might be the type of player I could see them adding.
I think they're going to go less flashy. What about like just a second or 2 seconds for like Valanciunas, just so they have safety at the big because they've got so many injury issues there. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, they're guys like Valanciunas, Vucevic. Like, there are certain players who they could add, and I mean, Vucevic, if he goes to OKC, will take a big ding in his fantasy value. That would not be ideal on the fantasy side, but he is the type of a player that I could see just filling a role naturally for them and being happy about winning.
I think they're just going to get a reserve type, though. I don't think they're going to go
probably.
all in on them. All right. Well, speaking of bigs and trades, Shannon, there actually was a big traded this week. Give us the skinny.
Yeah, this could end up being the biggest trade by the time the deadline hits. Nick Richards traded from Charlotte to Phoenix for a bunch of second-round picks. Richards was out for Thursday night's game, but he's expected to make his debut in Phoenix on Saturday. There's also reports that the Suns plan to deploy Richards as the starting center as soon as he becomes acclimated with his new team. I would expect, maybe a couple games off the bench first. But we're going to talk a lot about Richards later in our waiver wire segment, but he is going to be a popular pickup, especially after he gets officially anointed to the starting lineup.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued by that. That's some upside, absolutely some upside. I got beat out in one fab bidding for him earlier this week. Kind of
all right, so let's assume Richards. Let's discuss this now, since later it'll just be purely about his free agent value. Richards is available in your league. Do you take him over Derek Lively?
Well, Lively's a little dinged up. Maybe I might.
I would consider that. It'd be tough to drop Lively. Like if I had Lively and Richards was available, I don't think I would drop Lively for him. But if they were both available in my league,
I mean, that's a 10-team league. You're going to be making those types of decisions. It's going to be the Lively types who you might have to cut to pick up Richards. Further, I think Richards is a slightly above Lively once he enters Phoenix starting lineup.
And Richards gets more blocks than you think. He gets 1.2 blocks over just 21 minutes a game. I think those minutes could rise in Phoenix. So anyway, intriguing. Other news, Jimmy Butler, technically his suspension's over, though I feel like Miami has a whole bucket worth of other reasons to give him more of a suspension. But technically suspension's over and he's off the injury report. So Alex, what the heck is happening short term in Miami with we know he's healthy, Jimmy Butler. Physically healthy.
There has been no news to suggest that he will not play today. They play today. It sounds like he'll be there. It's kind of hard to believe.
Street clothes or
no? I think he's gonna be there and suit up and play. I mean, that's unless something changes. I mean, this podcast is coming out at 11 Central Time, or excuse me, 11 Eastern. It's been I would say suspiciously quiet.
That could get ugly if he's in uniform, end of the bench, bitching about stuff like that's could be must-see TV though.
I don't know. Teams got stuff up their sleeve. I mean, they suspended him for conduct detrimental to the team. I think there's also a refusal to provide services clause in some contracts.
Did he get paid during that suspension?
Actually, don't know.
Right? Yeah,
I don't know. But yeah. So I mean, if you're rostering Jimmy Butler, I guess fire him up, put him in your lineup, see what happens. I don't know. It's hard to, because he's still good enough. Like even if he's not participating to his full effort, he's probably better than whoever you have on your bench still. Like if he scores like 10 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 assists, that's probably better than who you got coming off your bench anyway. Or at least the upside is worth it. So
didn't Hero have a quote early in the week be saying like we have enough or something? Like he made some, not really a slight to Butler, but he was staying positive and like I like this roster now. I don't know.
Yeah, there was, I mean, even a month ago they were talking to Hero in the locker room and he was just kind of like, I don't know, man, I'm having fun. I was like, yeah, I'm sure.
More shots for me, baby.
Yeah. So that's gonna be interesting.
All right, fellas. Well, let's go to fan questions. As promised, let's start with P-Dub. Throws in a good morning. Thank you, P-Dub. Good morning to you as well. Should I move on from Cason Wallace to add Tari Eason? I'm just going to say yes because I'm an Eason fan, and he's available in 37% of leagues. We'll get into that later. But, gentlemen, what are your thoughts?
What do you think, Shannon?
Yeah, I agree. I would drop Wallace for Eason. Eason looked good last night. I thought he looked fresh. He had all his athleticism that you'd hope for. Despite the lengthy injury absence. So I expect him to, especially with Jabari still out, Eason
Yeah,
will get extra minutes from that. So I like Eason, and I think he'll return to the value we saw before his injury.
All right, let's move on just so we get more questions. Our man James asking a question for Alex, because I know this is his zone. Buy back Scoot Henderson, Portland Trailblazers.
Nick and I actually talked about this on a waiver wire video that just dropped, I think this morning or last night. But yeah, he had that big 39-point outburst, 8 for 10 shooting from 3, which actually took his 3-point percentage on the season from 29 to 34. And then he had 16 and 6 last night in a blowout loss. I would say buy back in, not because of the name value. Just buy back in because he's a guy over his past 5 games averaging 18 points and 5 assists. Yeah, he's on a bit of a heater, but don't hesitate to drop him if he starts playing bad again.
Simon's with some stinkers lately too. Like, oh goodness.
I got Simons in our 16-team league. I got Clowney. Like DeRozan had that bad stretch. I mean, there were points where I was getting like a combined 15 points out of those guys. Oh man.
All right, this one's for Shannon. Isaiah Collier. Is he a hold in a 12-team 9-category league?
We're gonna talk about him later. I will say that. So I don't know if we want to pick a different question because I'm gonna
it's our. I'll cover Collier really quickly, and then you'll share your opinions later during the waiver wire period. I mean, I'm very curious to see what happens tonight. Sexton is off the injury list. He rested the most recent game for the Jazz. And then Keontae George is also back in the mix. He had a big game in his return the other night. I wouldn't be surprised if Collier moves back to the bench and is playing a reserve role, but he's also a guy that's probably pretty safe to receive 25 to 28 minutes per game for the Jazz moving forward. Especially, it depends on what happens with Clarkson. If he's still on the roster, Clarkson's already been ruled out for tonight. This team is also shorthanded. They could go small and have 3 guard lineups out there in the short term, at least, because Markkanen's out as well tonight, as well as Kessler and Collins. So they're going to be supremely shorthanded for the Friday night game. But I think he is a short-term hold, yes. But after this weekend, my answer could change.
All right. Then here's one for Alex. Trade proposal. Would you trade Amen Thompson and Paul George for the Rockets Sengun 9-category? I know where I stand, but what do you think, Alex?
Man, it's hard to give up Thompson given how he's been playing. And I feel like when Jabari Smith comes back, he's going to be the one fighting for minutes, not Thompson. I trade him and Paul George for Sengun.
I mean,
I don't know if I would. It's cool. What do you think, Shannon?
It is tough, but I'm going with Amen and Paul George, because Paul George on a per game value is actually pretty close to Sengun right now. They're both in that 50 range, and then Thompson on the season is a top 100 player. But if you narrow the focus and just look at the past month or so for Thompson, I mean, he jumps up considerably. Waiting for this to load up, but Thompson's just been playing out of his mind, and I'm not that worried about where he's going to be once. Thompson's a top 45 player in the past month on a per game basis. If you watched the game last night, he's legit. He's as legit as you can be for a guy who has no jump shot whatsoever. But just absolutely demon on defense. One of the best rebounding players for his size in the league. I'm keeping Amen and Paul George.
All right. This is interesting. Guy's got a winning record, but he traded Sabonis for Luka. Alex, any news on Luka's return last week or two?
You have Giannis, AD, and Anthony Edwards as well.
It's a 14 league.
This is And you're 7-4. You got some brutal competition. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind that. I mean, Luka has more upside. Like, he's a better fantasy player than Sabonis. As far as like when is Luka going to come back, I heard that they are optimistic that he'll be back before the All-Star break, but I don't think he's coming back in January. That's what I'll say.
Okay. Got it. And then here's a trade for Shannon to think about. Would you trade McCollum for Malik Monk or OG Anunoby? He's punting threes.
Punting threes. Man, of those players, the one I like the most, kind of taking out which categories even, just across the board, I like Malik Monk the most. He has been great for the past month. It was basically since he's been moved into the starting lineup for the Kings. He's a top 70 player. OG gets lost for the Knicks. He is, at best their fourth or fifth option on any given night. And that's at best. I think Monk is the guy who has the highest ceiling of those three. And that's who I would target.
OG had a hot month. Like, OG was awesome in December, and since then he's basically been worse than he was last year. So I'm with Shannon on this.
I'm surprised he doesn't rebound more. So just a 4.5 a game. I just thought I expected more from him. All right, let's end with one more. How are we feeling about the rookie center in New Orleans? Is Missy a hold in a 12-teamer?
Yeah, the concern with Missy, ironically, was that he'd be a bad fit with Zion, and then Zion comes back now, and then Missy's stats have been like pretty. I mean, he scored single digits in 5 of the past 6. Rebounding is not especially good. Is he a hold in a 12-teamer? I don't think you have to. I don't think you have to.
You certainly don't have to. I think in most 12-teamers, he's still a hold. He's worth at least having on your bench. He's been a top 150 player over the past month. But the question that we had at the start of the show during the news section, Nick Richards or Missy, I'm taking Nick Richards.
Oh yeah, definitely. All right. And then we're going to end with, cause this is, I'm personally worried about this. Alex, what's the latest on Karl Anthony Towns and this bone chip thing in his hand?
Yeah, I mean, like right when I think it was after the game. I can't remember what he said. He really downplayed it. He was like, I'm just gonna rub some dirt on it, that kind of a thing. Some Tom Thibodeau mentality. I mean, I think I don't know if it's alarming. I think we just have to wait and see how he plays for the next week or so. When he comes back, because he missed one game, but it doesn't sound like it's fun to play with a bone chip in your hand.
No, sounds bad.
So if the question, like, if you're actually, if it's like actionable, like, would you trade Karl Anthony Towns now and be worried? He's playing so well that I don't think I would trade him, even if it's a bit of a risk not to.
All right. Thank you for the wisdom, gentlemen. And now let's take it to the waiver wire.
As far as games next week, we have Pacers and Spurs with only 2 games. Everybody else has 3 or 4. 14 teams with 4 games. It's pretty.
That might
pretty
be
dense.
left over. I don't know.
Is that left over?
Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're fine. We have like 10-ish teams with 4 games.
A lot of teams, yeah, but it's not 14. Yeah,
we are professionals. I'm going to kick things off with Lonzo Ball. Believe it or not, 22% rostered in Yahoo leagues, has played at least 20 minutes in 7 of the past 8 games, and that 8th game was 19 minutes. And during the stretch, he's averaging 8 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds, 2.7 stocks. That's 26 fantasy points. So he's essentially a fantasy point per minute right now. He's probably not gonna play back-to-backs. I don't know if he'll ever play 30 minutes in a game this season.
Yeah.
But there's not that many guys out there who are gonna give you this sort of stat line, this like just balanced across the board with the stocks. We know who Lonzo Ball is, before he got hurt, and he's been able to play well in limited minutes lately.
Can he play more minutes if they deal Levine, or are they like capping him at 20?
I think they're capping him, at least for this season. I mean, there's just I don't think they're going to risk it. He's been playing more and more as the season goes along, but I don't know if he'll ever actually reach 30 and stay there consistently.
All right. Well, before I give my first free agent pick, please, fans, if you like our videos, hit like and subscribe below. We need those metrics to keep this train wreck rolling. So please hit like and subscribe below. We beg you. My free agent pick, a name I've mentioned before, Tari Eason of your Houston Rockets. He's rostered 37% of Yahoo leagues, just returned last night, from a 13-game absence due to a leg issue. But remember, as Shannon pointed out earlier in the show, Jabari Smith is out until late February with a broken bone in his left hand. We're not sure how quickly he'll return there. Eason returned last night, played 24 minutes off the bench relative to 38-year-old power forward Jeff Green, who started but only got 23 minutes. Can't imagine Jeff Green long-term as much competition for Eason. That's going to lean more to Eason as time goes on. Remember, Eason is a stocks machine. Last 15 games before the injury, he had over 13 points, almost 3 stocks, over 7 rebounds per game, while shooting 81% from the charity stripe. Big Tari Eason fan. And once he gets his legs under him, I think there could be a ton of minutes here for him.
Agreed. Nice recommendation, Ken. My first waiver wire target of the week is Nick Richards, center for the Phoenix Suns. 29% rostered on Yahoo, 11% rostered on ESPN. As mentioned at the start of the show, Richards has been traded from the Hornets to the Suns earlier this week for a bunch of second-round picks. Reports out of Phoenix indicate that Richards will be a fixture in the Suns' starting lineup after he becomes acclimated with his new team. In 9 starts with the Hornets this season, Richards has averaged 11.3 points, 10.2 rebounds, and 1.7 blocks while shooting an elite 61.7% from the floor. I expect him to hold top 100 value as soon as he enters the Suns lineup, which puts him in comparable range to guys like Ayton, Derek Lively, ahead of Messi. So that's where I currently value Richards, and I think he's an add in pretty much any format.
Yeah, he's just got to be added. Like you sort of mentioned, there's a little bit of like exactly how many minutes is he going to play, but they brought him in for a reason. Like they sat Yusuf Nurkic. Like he's just not the rotation. Yeah. Like they want a big. And Mason Plumlee is not the answer.
Are they going to cut Nurkic just like an addition by subtraction type move? They're just out of just a bitter angst. Just get out.
That would not be a surprise.
Okay, I will go to my second waiver wire suggestion from the Dallas Mavericks, who are in a 4-game week. Naji Marshall, 13% rostered on Yahoo. I mentioned Luka Doncic is still going to be out for probably at least through the rest of this month. Naji Marshall's seeing more minutes. Derek Lively's kind of banged up. But Marshall, over the past 6 games, 11 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds, 1.3 steals in 29 minutes. That comes out to about 25 fantasy points. He can get you a little bit of everything. He'll have the occasional game where it'll be like 6 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. But then he'll have 10 assists like he did the other night. So we've seen Marshall be fairly productive, like when he was in New Orleans and Zion would miss time. Like he's not some random guy who came out of nowhere, right? They signed him because they like him. And I think even in standard formats, 4-game week, you could stream him in.
Gentlemen, I think we have a paying customer asking a live question, so I'm going to pause the waiver wire. Let's go to the question. It's from Kevin Dame asking, what happened to Kyle Kuzma?
What happened to him?
Better question. What should we expect rest of season from Kuzma and the mess in Washington?
No, I think what happened to him is a good question. That is a good question. This kind of started at the preseason, right? He was like airballing a bunch of shots, and now he's just been hurt, and he can't put together a string of games that's good. I just think like it's hard to diagnose, but I just think he just doesn't care. Like I think he just, what's the point? He just shows up, laces them up, doesn't warm up, fires off a couple shots, goes home. I don't know. I mean, you could pick him up if he's on your wire, but I don't know.
Any thoughts, Shannon, on Mr. Kuzma?
It's a tough watch at times, but he's going to pop off and have games. And I don't think his stay in Washington will be long. Keyshawn George had a big game last night, so that's part of it. They have a youth movement coming through for the Wizards. It'll be tough, man. But because even if he does get traded, I don't expect him to carry as heavy of a load as he had in Washington. You know, the one good news for anyone who is rostering him still is he's back in the starting lineup. He's been a fixture in the starting lineup for the Wizards, starting 8 straight games, 13-5 with 1.3 steals and 1 3-pointer. Holds some value, but those percentages over that 8-game stretch are a mess. 44% from the floor, 36% from the free throw line, and 23% from down.
The free throw line. What the heck? I mean, that. Yeesh. All right. Sorry. So let's get. Thank you, Mr. Dame, for paying money. We like money. I don't know how the heck that works, but apparently it's a thing. Back to the waiver wire suggestions. My second suggestion, Keon Johnson of the Brooklyn Nets. He's only rostered in roughly 17% of leagues. Mr. Johnson has started 20 straight games for this woeful Nets team. Over his last 14, almost 14 points, over 4 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.4 steals. Now, he is a poor shooter, but he's playing 30 minutes a game. In some ways, this is just a math question. He's better in deep points leagues, but he's getting monster minutes. We know the Nets are going to dump talent. They're already semi-faking injuries from it, as they want to make sure they tank for lottery. So I just think Keon Johnson could be seeing some monster minutes going forward for this Nets team.
Jumping to my second recommendation of the week, a guy we mentioned just a couple weeks ago, Ausar Thompson, forward for the Detroit Pistons, 48% rostered on Yahoo, 26% on ESPN. While he doesn't receive the same kind of praise as his brother, Ausar Thompson in Detroit is flashing plenty of upside as a fantasy relevant player. Over the past week, he's been a top 125 player on a per game basis, averaging 8.5 points, 5 boards, and 1.8 steals in 21 minutes per game. He needs to get more minutes to truly reach his fantasy ceiling. Unfortunately, he hasn't topped 26 minutes in those 4 starts, and I was hoping to see him play more than 22 minutes last night. He's very productive in that limited run, and I do expect that playing time to creep up eventually. And where he's really going to help you on a fantasy team is with his steals. He is an elite defensive player, just like his brother, and he can easily average over 2 steals per game.
Yeah, Ausar. I know we love the Thompsons. This is a pro Thompson podcast. That is for sure.
Both times. Yeah.
All right, my long shot this week, Isaiah Collier, 8% rostered. We talked about him earlier. Everything Shannon said before is completely right. The Jazz have a healthy backcourt for tonight's games. Collier might not see the kind of run he has been seeing, but over the past 7 games, he's basically been a starter and averaging 8 points, 8 assists, 4 rebounds for 25 fantasy points. Do not look at the field goal percentage. He had one good game from he had one good game from the field, and that is propping up his percentage to an extent. Because I mean, he was shooting like 16% from 3 before he went 3 for 6 or something like that. If you pick him up now and he plays like 17 minutes because Sexton and George and those guys are available, I would not panic drop him because John Collins is out, Lauri Markkanen is out, Jordan Clarkson is out, Johnny Juzang is out. Who else is out? Walker Kessler is out for rest. Officially diagnosed with rest.
How old is Kessler? What is he?
23?
Look, Jeff Green. Rest Jeff Green. Do not rest Walker Kessler.
So the point I'm trying to make is like this Jazz team is already playing like it's April.
Yeah.
So if you pick up Collier or pick up Sensabaugh or just whoever, you can hold them.
This is basically like my Keon Johnson suggestion. I mean, it's just these teams are train wrecks, and some reserves are going to get monster minutes. It's like the Jared Butler speculation in Washington, right, Alex?
Mm-hmm. Yes. What's your waiver wire suggestion, Ken?
My long shot, Jaylen Wells of the Memphis Grizzlies. Memphis has 4 games next week, and Wells has started the last 36 games for the Grizzlies, averaging 27 minutes a game. You know, you can't post stats if you don't play. Last 11 games for Wells, who's only rostered in 8% of leagues. Last 11 games, over 12 points, 2.2 3-pointers, 3.5 boards, strong free throw percentage, bad field goal percentage. This is purely a streaming move, but Wells gets minutes. The math adds up when it's a high game count week. If you need a filler for 1 week, Jaylen Wells of the Grizzlies is a good option.
All right, my long shot and our final free agent recommendation of the week. I plugged this guy in because I knew he's going to get the start last night, and I was hoping for a productive game. I'm still, even though he put up a dud, I'm still going to recommend him in very, very, very deep leagues. Jaylin Williams, not that Jaylin Williams, Jaylin with a Y and an I Williams for the Oklahoma City Thunder. He's 1% roster on ESPN, 1% on Yahoo. Isaiah Hartenstein is out for at least a week. He's going to be reevaluated next week with a left calf strain. And right now, Jaylin Williams is the starting center for the Thunder. He was bad last night, 14 minutes, 5 points, 5 rebounds, nothing on the defensive side. But the game script for that blowout, I mean, that game was over like halfway through the second quarter. So I'm not really going to pay much attention to that game script and game flow. Hopefully Williams sees more run. The other Jaylin Williams is the only player on OKC who played 30 minutes last night. So if you're in a very, very deep league and you're desperate for a streaming option, Jaylin Williams with the Y and an I is worthy of consideration.
And I don't know if you mentioned this, but he had 4 fouls in 14 minutes. So he's not going to have that many fouls going forward, probably. So
no,
like you said,
and
tough matchup.
Yeah, a tough matchup. And it's also entirely possible because the Thunder were playing the Cavs. They were doing a matchup-based starting lineup. They could move the other Jaylen Williams to starting center like they did earlier this year. It's something to keep an eye on. But Jaylen Williams, who's available on your free agent wire, he's had a couple of big games. He just had 35 fantasy points against Washington last week. So it is possible. He doesn't always put up duds, but the upside, the ceiling is pretty low.
Well, there's always leagues where the roster dictates that centers are a premium, and that's a good place to gamble. I've been gambling on Nick Claxton like 3 times in a double center league. I'm like, come on, Nick. When are we getting back to last year?
Yeah, those 2 center leagues can be they can be brutal, but that's what we have Jaylen Williams for. I think it's time we go to our Friday DFS. It is a 9-game slate this Friday. Highest over under 239. Memphis at San Antonio. That is a rematch from a few nights ago. I don't quite remember. As always, for the relevant injuries, check the RotoWire daily lineups / starting lineups page, where we have all of the probable, questionable, doubtful, resting 23-year-olds all listed on there. What's the first place you turned on this slate, Shannon?
Yeah, I mean, going back to Nick Richards, not the Phoenix Suns, but Nick Richards, because he left a hole in Charlotte that is going to be filled by Mark Williams. the only real center on that team now. And Williams is stepping it up. He's coming off back-to-back 50 fantasy point games. He's 6,800 against on DraftKings, and he's going up against Chicago. The Charlotte-Chicago matchup is one of the premium matchups to target for tonight's slate. And I love Williams, even at 6,800, which is probably his most expensive he's been all year. He does have an injury designation, left knee soreness, but he's probable to play. I would not be surprised if we see another 40 plus fantasy point outing from Mark Williams.
That man is averaging 23 points, 14 rebounds, 3.5 assists, and 1.5 blocks per 36 this year. That is a breakout season. Once he starts getting the minutes consistently. I will say, we have this Utah New Orleans matchup in which New Orleans is favored by 12 points. This could be a Trey Murphy spot. I mean, it could be a Zion spot, honestly. I mean, I don't really know who on Utah is dealing with the combination of Trey Murphy and Zion Williamson, because as of right now, we have them projected to be starting at forward Cody Williams and Bryce Sensabaugh. Good luck to those guys trying to guard either Murphy or Zion. And that game is a 230 over under. So I would certainly entertain throwing those guys into my lineup.
I 100% with you. I love Trey Murphy tonight. His salary on DraftKings has gone up significantly in the past few weeks, but rightfully so. He's been dominating. This is the Trey Murphy. I apologize. I think I said Troy earlier. This is the Trey Murphy that we've all expected for the past couple of years. And it's great to see. I mean, just monster outing after monster outing. Like Mark Williams coming off back-to-back 50-plus fantasy point outings, 54.5 fantasy points against Chicago and 52 against the Dallas Mavericks. $7,800 salary for Murphy the third tonight. I love him there. On the other side of that game, I am curious to see what the Jazz do with their starting guards. Sensabaugh will be an option. They're very short at forward and in the front court as well. And then Philip Pikowski, I like a lot as well. To be determined if he's going to start, but he's only 4,200. And I think this might be a night where he actually plays 30 minutes, giving the available players on the Jazz roster for the slate.
We have what other high over-unders do we have? We have this Milwaukee-Toronto game, which has a 231 over-under because Toronto just bleeds points. So certainly something I would consider there. Giannis has had some nice assist games against the Raptors. I know it's not exactly like a DFS. Doesn't matter how they get the points. But if you're playing a pick'em situation, Giannis says they just load up the paint. And so Giannis dishes. We also have 239. Yeah, that Memphis San Antonio game. Morant's questionable for that game. Keep that in mind because Scottie Pippen Jr. could be an option in that case. Ken mentioned Jaylen Wells earlier. And where was it going to go? Oh, yeah, dude. Is there anybody from any of those games or different games that you like, Shannon?
Well, I admit I only looked at the main slate and that San Antonio game's the late slate only on DraftKings tonight. So I didn't do a deep dive there, but I can move the conversation to Orlando.
Sure.
And if Ken wants to hop in and weigh in on Orlando versus Boston tonight, the Magic will be shorthanded. You've got Suggs is out, Goga's out. And with Goga being out, that means it's Wendell Carter Jr. time. $4,300 on DraftKings. Wendell Carter's coming off one of his better games of the season. He earned the start against Milwaukee, played 33 minutes, and finished with 32.5 fantasy points. Not the greatest game in the world, 3 of 12 from the floor, but he got the minutes, and with that came a double-double. I expect something similar in Boston tonight.
Yeah, Boston not playing well. They'll either, lost to Toronto in Toronto this week, prior games. So either come back fighting mad tonight or they continue the slide. Carter will rebound well against Porzingis, I suspect, but I don't know about his other stats. Banchero's fine, playing really well since his return. And the Magic oddly just have the Celtics number the past couple of years. always hate to see Mo Wagner do well against the Celtics. The Celtics cut him after that Daniel Tice trade a few years ago, and he always annoys the heck out of the Celtics. I think he's still angry at the organization. Odd revenge games. You might, but I think is Mo Wagner even? He's out too, right?
He's out too.
ACL, right?
So yeah. So he might be. Is he out for
He's
the season? He's out for the season. Yeah.
He's gonna shed the boot. He's gonna just for this game. He's gonna shed the boot, come play.
No, I'm babbling though. I don't know who to take in this. Magic always humiliate the Celtics. Makes me
one interesting thing, and I actually looked this up the other day, is randomly while I was doing it for a prop bets article, but the Magic over the past 10 games are allowing just 9.7 wide open threes per game to opponents. And the next the next lowest team is Brooklyn at 16. There's like a 6 wide open 3 gap between the Magic, who allow the fewest, and the Bucks took 12 threes against them the other night. 12. They took 12 threes against Orlando.
That's why the Nuggets miss KCP. And that's why you see De Silva getting minutes for them. Silva doesn't score, but he plays great perimeter defense.
So it's an interesting matchup because you have the team allowing the fewest wide open threes against a Boston team that shoots the most wide open threes. And so I think this game could get weird. I don't know if I would take Orlando, minus 14.5, but I would think about it. Might take the under.
My bourbon pal in that Raptors loss texted me like 7 times. They are not passing the ball. All caps.
Yeah. One last game to just keep in mind and keep tabs on the Karl Anthony Towns injury.
Oh, yeah.
If Towns is out, I like Josh Hart. He's at $8,000. He had 17 rebounds. He had a triple-double, 10, 17, and 12 in the game against Philly, which Towns missed. And he will need to pick up the rebounding slack again tonight if Towns misses another game. Likewise, Mikal Bridges is only $5,900 on DraftKings. He's a roller coaster. He has a 4-point fantasy game and an 0 for 9 outing against OKC just a couple weeks ago. But that's not typical. He's usually a pretty safe bet to hit that 30-point, finish right around 30 fantasy points. And his price dipping to $5,900. I just think he's worth the risk now to slot into your lineup.
It's odd how Hart just totally out rebounds on Anunoby when Towns is out, but he does. Hart has always been a strong rebounder.
That man was built to play for Tom Thibodeau.
He really is.
All right, Ken. I think it's time we can go to your old man rant.
You know what today, Alex? It's an old man kudos, an old man tip of the hat, if you will. There's no angry rant from me today. Instead, I'd like to give a tip of the hat to fellow old man and LA Clippers owner Steve Ballmer. The Ballmers are donating $15 million in emergency funding for people affected by the deadly Los Angeles wildfires. Steve and wife Connie said in a joint statement, quote, "We love LA and are committed to supporting the communities affected by the devastating wildfires. The donation will help, quote, particularly in the historic racially diverse community of Altadena. While other billionaires shoot rockets into space and or line up to kiss the rear end of political leaders, the Ballmers are using their wealth to help people." What a novel concept. Thank you, Ballmer family. Please keep dancing, Steve.
He really is a staple when you watch those Clippers games.
Steve Ballmer, just to I don't know, throw some egg on something for no reason in particular. Steve Ballmer donating $15 million, the equivalent of me donating about $228.
Which would also be great.
That would be great.
That would be a nice move. Go ahead.
I might be overshooting that by a considerable amount as well.
It's better than doing nothing or throwing
Absolutely.
your money away in some ego thing. I don't know. Thank you, Ballmer family.
Yes.
He could have put 15 million on Boston money line, but whatever. I guess we can help people. Okay. Ken, let's round this thing out with a quote.
Yeah, no mispronounced names. We go into quotes. I don't think we screwed up any names.
I will say this is a deep cut. So for the Washington Wizards, the rookie George, it looks like it's Keyshawn. It is actually Keyshawn. I got this one messed up myself early in the season. I looked it up. I watched the the highlights or whatever. It is Keyshawn. I do remember that one.
I've watched at least 3 Wizards games this year, and the most recent one was just last week. I think it was Friday or Saturday night. It was past weekend, and Wizards versus Chicago. And I swear they called him Keyshawn every time. And they were hyping him up like he was the greatest thing and had the sweetest 3-point stroke in the world.
We can look into it. Basketball Reference.
I believe you.
Keyshawn.
I believe you. Well, every time I look at the name, though, I will default to Keyshawn.
I love his hair out crazy headshot photo that he did on Media Day. It's just all over the place for a rookie. I worry he's a guy who's never going to have a good field goal percentage, though. He's just a shameless gunner.
He's fun to watch, but the comp that I would give him is a young Kyle Kuzma. So I don't know if that's
come
Kuzma's mentoring him. It's just in a terrible way.
All right, I got official confirmation here. I went to the NBA.com pronunciation guide where they mic players up and they say your name. Say your name. Yeah. he said Keyshawn.
All right.
So we'll see.
My DC buddies say Keyshawn, and I kind of just trust them because they're Wizards fans. All right, well, let's go to the out quote then. Thank you for that update, Alex. But let's go to the out quote. Let's go back to OKC, where star point guard Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was interviewed after their big win Thursday over Cleveland, pushed to explain his 40-point outburst in this alleged payback game. SGA said, quote, "I was just playing basketball, the game I love. I work hard, try to give the game my all, and see what it gives me back, or gives back to me," end quote. Attention passengers, this 3-car fantasy train wreck has hit the end of the line.